it's not just money, because becoming wealthy, let's think about, that phrase, becoming is all about a certain level of awakening, a certain level of growth, of evolution, or different levels of evolution that you're going through in your life, depending on the season of life that you're in. And what does wealth mean? Wealth is all about not just money, it's about values. How are you going about making that money? Are you being in integrity, being working in excellence? Are you being transformational to others, creating win-wins for everyone, as you engage in business or invest your money?
Welcome to Reward, the podcast of The Trust. We are the show specifically for women entrepreneurs who want to build businesses into the multi-million-dollar revenues and beyond, but especially because we know the reward is much greater than that. I'm Allie Brown, and I'm excited to introduce you to these diverse female leaders from a variety of industries, women making huge impact and who are unwilling to settle for the status quo. On the web, visit jointhetrust.org to learn more about our modern community for forward-thinking 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. That's jointhetrust.org. See you there. Now, get ready to enjoy this episode's powerful conversation. Michelle Bosch, welcome to Reward. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Allie. I am super excited to chat with you today. All things rewards, financial rewards, time rewards, the ability to have the freedom to, live out your purpose, to be who you truly are. I mean, there's so many rewards, right? So
Yeah.
of just engaging in an entrepreneurial venture or investing or doing whatever it is that, you're here to do on this earth. So thank you
This
for
is going to
having
be
me.
such a great conversation. And yeah, I'm so excited to have you because whenever we talk, and I know that you talk with, other members of the trust or in front of the room at our meetings, women just listen to you in a different way about wealth than I think that they've, it's such a different conversation coming from your perspective, and not just because you're female, but a lot of your background. And I, some shows I don't even ask people about their backstory, but yours is such, I think, such an important part of who you've become and why you do what you do. So would you mind starting with a bit of your background and
Yeah.
how you came, into being, not only a wealthy woman yourself, but this wealth, what people, people see you as a wealth expert. It's what you specialize in now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I definitely have experienced being wealthy and not being wealthy, but being on my way to becoming wealthy. So I am an immigrant into the US. I'm originally from Honduras. I came here to study, and I did what everyone else did, which is, get a great education, go get a corporate job and start working, not just 40 hours, but more like 60 hours a week, punching the clock for someone else from 9 to, it was more like 8 to 10. Sometimes at month end, because of my background in finance, having to work through weekends, for month end closings and so on and so forth. And at some point I realized, well, that is great. I'm having a great paycheck, but that paycheck is only helping me pay the bills, but really not really get ahead. And so there was no correlation between my paycheck and the effort I was putting into the fulfillment that I felt. And isn't that the story of so many women in corporate, and not just women, men and women alike? And I started looking into real estate. And the reason why real estate is pretty relevant, and that's because my father actually passed away when I was very young. My mother is now a retired elementary teacher, but back then she wasn't retired. She was, raising me as a single mother or a widow, and on a salary of a teacher. And he had the foresight a few years prior to my birth to buy a piece of commercial property that to this day, we rent out, and it produces income, rental income, and was really what allowed my mother to supplement her income and send me to private school, gave me the opportunity to come here to the US and not have a whole lot of student loans, attached to that education and so on and so forth. And so I thought, real estate is something that has been good to me personally and my family. Let me go ahead and look into real estate. But when we think about real estate, we always think about the HGTV show, right? The house that is a complete junker that you're going to renovate. And we actually started looking at junkers driving by here in Phoenix, Arizona, and looking at junkers and trying to put one under contract. And very quickly we realized that we were in over our heads. We didn't know anything about foundation repairs, about roofing, about how to estimate repairs on a kitchen, on just dealing with contractors and getting credit or hard money lending, to really finance the renovation of the home to then be able to sell it again, for a profit. And then we stumbled into something called tax liens, tax deeds. But not to bore you, it's basically the concept that here in the US you can lose your property to property taxes, which is nothing that it's unheard of outside of the US. And so we started realizing that a lot of those properties that were coming up for auction, where people were losing their properties, were pieces of land. And we started reaching out to owners of vacant land and buying those for 40 cents on the dollar, 10 to 40 cents on the dollar, and then turning around and wholesaling them for quick cash. Basically, I was doing what people are doing on HGTV. And instead of doing it with houses, I was taking all the complication of the renovations, of the contractors, of, the tenants, of the termites, of everything that comes with a house, and making the same or more money with the simplicity, which allowed us to scale very, very quickly and actually bring that business to almost 8 figures, a little bit over 8 figures, actually. And create passive income of about $70,000 of passive income per month. Because when we sold that land, we didn't just sell it for quick cash, but we also sold it using seller financing, where we become the bank and somebody gives me a down payment, just like a bank would receive a down payment from you when you're purchasing your home. And then you make monthly payments, on your home. That's your mortgage. Well, that's what I was doing, but I was being the bank and somebody else has been paying me, $300, $400, $500 every single month for their land, whether it be infill lots in the city, think about a subdivision that has already houses on it, and then there's an empty lot, or lots in the path of growth, a little bit on the outskirts, or recreational land, people that want to have a second home and have fun over the weekend, and they're looking for a piece of land. And so that kind of became our target, and that's the land that we specialize. And then eventually, we started looking into single families for long-term hold, and eventually started investing in 2016 in large apartment buildings that we syndicate, and anywhere from 45 units all the way to 250 units. And that's pretty much the story of rags to riches of really having had enough, where I don't think my mother ever had to worry about putting food on the table, but also hearing as I was growing up, well, if I wanted something that was a little bit out of the ordinary, hearing we can't afford that. And that allowed me to have a certain level of drive, of ambition, of creating here in this country, basically a life better than the one that I had left behind. There was a little bit of pain there. There was the pain of, the job that didn't give us fulfillment and that did not correlate in terms of paycheck to really what we thought the American dream was supposed to be about. So we had to reset and come up with our own American dream of how that was going to look for us. And that's how, and I say us because now I'm married, 22 years actually, as of,
Wow.
a few days from this recording, to my amazing husband. He's also an immigrant from Germany. And it's been, a definitely something that we've built together, that we've worked on together for the last 20 something years. So
yeah,
that's where the we comes. It's not that I have multiple personalities, although I do have some of those too as well. If I don't have my cup of coffee,
I think I've seen some of those too. When you go into your yeah, angry Latina.
Yes. Yes. No
We don't
coffee
mess
will
with
do it.
you.
And lately, actually, I've been taking, this is gonna sound bad, but have you heard about these mushroom drinks, for the mornings? And
I
it's
haven't tried them though.
basically nootropics, yeah, and adaptogen, and they have minimal caffeine, which is good, but it gives you this ability to feel lucid and really clear headed. Anyways, but I had
Well,
one of those today, so no
I'd like
multiple
one of those. That
personalities
sounds
today.
good. Yeah. So, cause I, yeah, my team's seen all of my personalities today, I think. So sorry, girls. Depends on the day, right? So it's that kind of day. So why is this important to you, Michelle? And I know you have such a passion for helping other women do what I observe is like, okay, let me back up. Most women, now in our generation and all the opportunities that are in front of us, we're great earners now. We step into roles and we
Yeah,
kick it and we can generate the money, but there still seems to be such this gap with building wealth. Let's talk about that and
yeah,
why that is so important for you to, that's really part of your legacy to pass on to women.
yeah. It is, because that's how that was the main driver for us. At some point, having a moment of reflection and realizing, wow, look at all that we have accomplished, and having a need for the next level of contribution, which was to start a coaching company, start teaching others a lot of what we know so far in the land flipping world. um, but now I am very passionate about teaching women to become wealthy. And right now, one of the most important women in my life is actually my daughter Sophia. She's 15 years old, and on September 4th she's going to be turning 16, which is a big deal here in the US. It's a coming of age date or birthday. And I'm passionate because she is seeing it, or I'm demonstrating for her what it is to be an independent woman, to go out there and make her own money. But it's very important for me to teach her as well how to make that money work for her. So, and it's not just money, because becoming wealthy, let's think about that phrase, becoming is all about a certain level of awakening, a certain level of growth, of evolution, or different levels of evolution that you're going through in your life, depending on the season of life that you're in. And what does wealth mean? Wealth is all about not just money, it's about values. How are you going about making that money? Are you being in integrity, being working in excellence? Are you being transformational to others, creating win-wins for everyone, as you engage in business or invest your money? Is your investment having an impact on others as well in a positive way? Are you having freedom of time, of relationships, of purpose, of truly being who you are? That's what wealth is about. And I think, yeah, there's whole redefining, number one, of wealth. But it starts with, I think, concretely, physically and tangibly thinking about the wealth in your bank account. But I'm going to say that the wealth in that bank account is going to correlate to some of these other intangibles that wealth is all a part of, that it's all about of.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm passionate because I'm having a 15-year-old that I'm going to be bringing through a series of what I like to call three stages, towards becoming wealthy. And one of the stages is coming up with her security plan. So, she has actually already started flipping some land. She hasn't done her first flip yet, but she has understood the importance of generating leads for her business, for her little land business, and making offers and evaluating her properties, doing due diligence, coming up with a dollar amount to offer to a seller. Shortly after that, right now, we're expecting the first probably contracts accepted from sellers, and she's going to be able to talk to sellers and possibly even negotiate and so on and so forth. So her security plan is going to be about using that little vehicle, that cash machine, which I like to call of land flipping, to build for herself income of about $5,000 a month, of passive income from $5,000 a month. That if you think about it, for most American families, that constitutes being able to pay a mortgage on a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. I'm not talking about a luxury home. I'm talking about, a starter home. It's the ability to pay for a car payment, for insurance, and some food. It's not to have an extravagant lifestyle, but it's for her to build on, out of her own initiative and out of her own efforts, that ability of security financially for herself. So that's going to be our first kind of like our first stage of this 5-year plan that I'm on helping her basically and teaching her how to become wealthy. The second stage is really creating for herself a comfort plan, which is nothing more than about $10,000 a month. That's how we have, at least for her, she's going to be in 5 years' time a sophomore in college, and that's what we defined as what our, her comfort plan is going to look like. For most American families, though, that comfort plan looks like, I don't know, maybe $10,000 to $15,000, where you have a slightly better home, a slightly better car. You can go on, on a week or two of vacation. There's a little bit of discretionary income there, and it's a slightly more comfortable, hence the word comfort plan, comfortable lifestyle that you can live with approximately that amount. Yeah. And then the next one being for her is going to be more like 15, but for us, if we think about us adults, entrepreneurs, ours probably might look like more like 30, 50, or even $100,000 every single month from passive income, so it just depends. You have to adapt that, those concepts basically to your own reality. But for her, reality is going to be about $15,000. If I was to put this in context, Ali, most women, the women that you attract, for example, at the trust, or most women that are listening, that have been big followers, of you and what you stand for and your work, your great work, this is translating, if we say the security plan is $7,000, that's about $84,000 a year, which means in passive income, which means that you need to invest $560,000 at 15% return to have $7,000 in passive income. For most of us, this is not it's not a huge stretch. It's for someone that is starting from ground zero, like Sophia is, my daughter, she's having to go work hard doing her little land flipping business to create, that kind of level. But for us, some of us might even have that already in our retirement accounts, in our IRAs, in our 401ks, and so on. And it has been right now in asset classes that have not given us control. And what I mean by that, it's usually in the stock market, where you really don't have control over, how quickly you sell a property, or how quickly you improve, or how well you can improve the income, the rental income of a property, as you do, for example, in real estate. I'm passionate, as you can tell, about real estate because that has been, my journey of becoming wealthy. It has been using that asset class, that particular vehicle. But there's nothing wrong with our businesses and our profession being the vehicle, our little cash machine that we then allocate income from into a different asset class. Yeah. An asset class that can produce passive income, so that if something was to happen, I always tell Sophia, you don't have to worry about it. But if you didn't have the blessing of parents that have, become wealthy, and you had to start from scratch, you would know that with your security plan, you would have a roof over your head, transportation, food, and take care of basic necessities, And for us, how that translates for us, in our security plan is that if our businesses, stopped working, if we decided to stop working and exercise some of those rewards of doing something else with our time other than becoming entrepreneurs, and so on and so forth. Or God forbid you have a healthcare, which I recently had, for example. I had a healthcare. I thought I had breast cancer. Thank goodness, is a benign tumor. I also had some challenges, medical challenges earlier in the year, and I had to take 7 weeks off to go and get medical treatment. And in never of those 7 weeks did I have to worry about, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be exchanging hours for dollars in my business, and have that be an additional preoccupation, and me starting to make decisions out of despair about my own healthcare because I had that security plan in place. I had that comfort plan in place, from passive income, from basically income that doesn't require me to engage in a service actively in order for me to get that income coming into my bank account every single month. It comes from rental income from real estate. So that's, I think that is something that fires me up. That is something that I'm passionate about teaching other women. Because like you said, I think what happens is that there's this myth that, taking our finances into our own hands is difficult, has to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be complicated. You can completely simplify this, and there's just a few things that you do need to learn. There's certain skill sets that you do need to equip yourself with in order to evaluate an opportunity, in order to evaluate perhaps an investment, people that you're going to invest with, or a particular piece of property, that you're looking to invest some of your money, for returns, for passive returns.
Yeah.
So
I know you, both you and Jack have mentioned several times self-directed IRAs, which I've heard about over the years as well.
Yeah.
Can you share a bit? When people often first hear of that, they're like, wait, it's almost like mixing the traditional with then, doing things on our own. Can you talk about that for a minute? Because I just really like people to know that there are vehicles like this that exist, that beyond the typical, advice you may be getting out there.
Yeah. So this is what happens. So we do multifamily syndications where we invite other investors to come and invest with us. And what I have had the situation is that a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I have X amount of money, like $500,000 tied in, this IRA. And this IRA, the investment is they're basically using that money to invest in the stock market or in this mutual fund or in this index, whatever it might be. Yeah. And I have the situation where I tell people, well, have you ever heard about a self-directed IRA, which means that it's an IRA where you have a custodian, just like you have a custodian right now for yours. You probably set yours up through your financial planner. And that financial planner is being compensated for you investing into the mutual funds or the stocks that basically IRA is investing in. In this situation, you're setting yourself up with a self-directed, with a custodian, with a third-party company that is not necessarily your financial planner, and where you have control, a checkbook, and you can direct that IRA and the funds in that IRA to be invested in something other than the stock market or other than mutual funds or other than whatever it might be. And you can direct it to invest on a specific project, on a specific 100 or 57 unit, apartment complex that, you decide to invest passively in with an investment group. Whether it be mine or, whoever else you might, come across. It could be Grant Cardone. You hear about Grant Cardone also syndicating, big projects as well. I mean, there's so many other, bigger players out there doing this. But basically it's vetting, some of those skill sets that you're going to have to gain is going to be vetting the property, the market, the location, vetting, the people, that team. Does that team, have they done it before successfully? Do they have a track history of success? How often do they pay, quarterly dividends or quarterly distributions? How did they handle, for example, a crisis such as the pandemic? when that happened, because that intimately affected housing and affected real estate, with people's ability to, make payments or not make payments, because they couldn't go to work, or a lot of businesses going out of business during the pandemic. Just like many of us thrived, there was this whole sector of businesses that basically didn't do so well. And anyone that, relied on income from those businesses, if they're your tenant, how did a how did a syndicator go through such a through such a market? Anyways, but going back to the self-directed IRA, it's your ability to direct your funds basically and have control over where you invest your funds. And now when distributions are being made and returns are being had, which usually, in our syndications are anywhere between 15 and 20% returns, those returns are going into your retirement fund, and you're turbocharging those retirement funds, that self-directed IRA, and it continues to grow, with the advantages, the tax advantages that come with having that money grow inside of the IRA as well. So there's this beauty about real estate that comes with you having the opportunity to have it be a vehicle to produce cash, like Sophia, my daughter, is producing with her land flipping. Your ability to produce passive income, like many of us are doing, either in the single family homes or with Airbnb rentals or with apartment, projects like I do. And it's also allowing you to take advantage of depreciation, that is counting against that income and minimizing your tax liability, so that the money that you are making, is not, because it's disheartening having to, work all year long and then have to write a big check to the IRS for your hard-earned work when they had nothing to do with it, right? So we want to look for ways in which we can minimize that, that tax impact as well, and that tax liability. And real estate is just a formidable vehicle to do that. Yeah, so that's all the story with self-directed IRAs. More than likely, if you go to your to your financial planner, because his compensation is tied to to transactions in mutual funds or in the stock market, he's gonna dissuade you or persuade you against a self-directed IRA. But it's time for us to take control of our money and not abdicate responsibility of our finances to a financial planner. Because if a financial planner right now, can you imagine, is making, I don't know, $150,000 to $200,000 a year, and you're a seven-figure earner, why would you be taking advice from a guy that is making $200,000? It just makes no sense in your plan.
It's really interesting. Yeah, there's it seems to be the one category where we give away so much power still, don't we? Like we're going and kicking tail in business, and we're bold and we're courageous. And then, we have this check, and then we're like, well, oh, here, Mr. Advisor, right? And still not understanding always everything that's going on there. And so one thing I loved from the moment I met you and Jack was just how you went about this differently from the beginning, like, and it was partly based on your background from your family, right?
Yeah.
But you just knew there, you're like, there's got to be a way we do this differently. There's just got to be a way. So this one thing I love about the trust and the members of the trust is there are just so many of us in different categories are bringing these new ways of living, of being, of working, of investing, and everything's just, not one of them is super like traditional and stodgy. Like everything is just so exciting right now. It's overwhelming though. So where do you recommend, if a woman's listening to this right now and she's like, damn right, I've been giving my check to Norm Farkenbarker at Fidelity or whatever it is, you know what I mean? And then, like, I don't know what he does with my money or whatever. If they want to get started doing something different, or hedging their bets, maybe something in addition to what they're doing, where would they start? Where would she start?
Well, it depends on whether you want to, you need to first decide, will I become an active investor, or am I going to become like my daughter Sophia is being right now? She's actively, sending, direct mail to get in contact with sellers so that she can put those properties under contract, and she's actively marketing for buyers. So are you going to be an active investor, or are you going to be a passive investor? A passive investor is someone that, might look for somebody that is already operating and syndicating, real estate projects, or running businesses, and you're going to become an investor in other people's projects. So that's the very first distinction, is what am I going to be? Yeah. And if you wanted to learn a little bit more about what we do in active investments with land flipping, just go to michellebosch.com, and there's a little section there about, land and our land community. Or if you wanted to learn a little bit about multifamily and real estate in general, there's a little tab there as well where you could go, and learn a little bit more about syndications and in general. And I would say, whether it be me or anyone else out there, it's start getting yourself educated. It's start getting curious. It's start basically learning about this stuff. That's the first step, is gathering information, right? So that you can make an educated decision about, okay, this all makes sense, and it's time for me at some point to pull the trigger. I would say, give yourself a time-bound deadline of, okay, during the next 90 days, I will educate myself as much as I can on all things passive investing, whether it be real estate or whatever it might be. Yeah. If it's real estate, I'm going to learn everything there is to know right now as much as I can. I'm going to put in maybe, I don't know, 3-4 hours a week of education and trying to learn over the next 3 months. And then after 3 months, decide, okay, this is all the buffet or the array of what the rainbow looks out there in terms of possibilities for me to start investing. And then pick one and make it a point during the next quarter, the next 90 days, that next 90-day sprint, to actually start putting your money somewhere. Yeah. Because nothing is going to teach you more about investing than actually being serious about it and putting your money where your mind and your mouth is. Yeah. And actually putting and deploying some of your cash, basically. And think about your cash, and every dollar that you invest. I always tell even my daughter Sophia, I'm like, think about it like this: they're going to war for you, and they're going to bring many more prisoners back into your kingdom. And that's the whole point. Money there should be working for us and in service to us, versus us in service to money. Yeah. And when you start investing, that's exactly what happens. I always like to think of, like, even that security plan, when we think about creating those first $5,000 of passive income from real estate assets, of putting those assets inside of a little moat. There's, the times of the kingdoms and castles, and there's a moat around the kingdom of the queen, of England, let's say, for example. There's a moat. The moat in our times that secures our assets are LLCs, our proper estate planning, proper tax strategy, to make sure that those assets and the income that those assets are producing is safeguarded, is growing, and that it's protected from any crazies out there. So, because we work too hard to, lose, an asset to a frivolous lawsuit, or to, because that also comes with becoming wealthy. You sometimes become a target for people. Yeah. So part of that security plan is also making sure that, that you take care of those things, that, whenever you're investing with someone, is there an LLC where that asset is going to be? Do I have shares into that LLC, that is the owner of the asset? In terms of operating agreement, how are the, investors treated? How often are distributions on that investment being done? You want to learn everything about it. And make sure that it's protected. Or if it's your own Airbnb, I think we was it with you that we talked about you possibly getting an Airbnb, or it may have been some other member of the trust And
I'm not sure.
yeah, and they were like, yeah, well, first thing is the site on the market, on a place, because she was talking about she wanted to have a second home, and how can I have a second home without it costing me money, but actually making me money? So I was telling her my experience about our home here in Sedona. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath that we completely gutted and turned into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and right now is producing about 30% more in income than I'm paying on the mortgage from
Yeah.
just renting it out as an Airbnb. And I am able to have a second home that is not costing me money on really, it's making me money, an additional 30 grand, on top of what I'm having to pay yearly for mortgage and property taxes and maintenance and so on and so forth. This is net operating income, basically, at the end of the day, that I'm talking about. So yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I hope all of you listening know that, like Michelle, we all just shut up and listen when Michelle talks. We're just like taking notes and we just listen, because she'll keep going too. She'll be like, and then let me give you another tip. And we're all just writing stuff down. We love it.
What I love about this process of becoming wealthy is that, especially with real estate, there's this aspect of it being super 3D, because there's nothing more physical and heavy and like that tells you that I am here and that I exist, like a building, yeah, or a house or a piece of land. But this process of becoming wealthy, at least, with real estate, is so much more than just that. Like we were talking earlier, it's about, as you're doing it, can I create win-wins, for, if I'm looking at an apartment building, for the tenants that are going to be there, for the entire community, what am I doing basically that is impacting the entire neighborhood? Win-win for the person that sold it to me, when I in turn sell this asset, for the person that is going to buy it from me. How can I continue to create win-win scenarios? And so that is part of becoming wealthy as well, is thinking about that.
Michelle, for you, in how hard you've worked, obviously the money has been great to to build, and the wealth to build, but what's the real reward for you, or multiple rewards?
Yeah, I think the real reward for me has been, or is, and continues to be, at the beginning, it was the freedom of money. Yeah. And just the freedoms that the options and choices, and the world of possibility that opens for you. But then it started becoming the freedom of time, that I have now, and that I, progressively started experiencing the moment that I left corporate America, by having, our own business and investing in real estate. It was that freedom of time, one of the rewards. The other one was like, okay, I have the opportunity right now to choose who I want to work with, in what markets I want to invest with, what brokers to work with, what team do I bring on board, what investors do I want to bring on, if it's in a syndication with us. I have that freedom. I have the freedom of purpose. I have the freedom to right now, at this point, not compromise, self-edit, and be who I am. Not because when you're trying to. I'm not going to say that first impressions are not important and that you want to put your best foot forward. But what I'm trying to say is that there's certain aspects of ourselves that, even in business, or opinions that we might have, where we don't give our opinions, where we stay silent, where we don't speak up, where we don't fully show up like who we truly are, out of some sort of fear of visibility or of what people will say. And this process of becoming wealthy, not because the money is giving me that confidence, but because the process of who I've become has allowed me to feel very comfortable in my skin, in how I speak, in my thoughts, in what I believe in, that I'm not scared to be a free thinker, to have the freedom to think differently, like you said. And I think every single person in the trust, and every single woman in the trust, has that freedom as well. And that's why we all are thriving in our businesses in a very different way, because we've been able to exercise that freedom to be different. Like, Like, for example, I go to a real estate investors association to this day, and people are like, well, what are you in? What market are you in? Or what are you flipping? What price range of houses? And I'm like, oh, I don't flip houses. I flip land. And they look at me like I have three heads, because land is something so different. And so many other women in the trust are doing things, like you said, so very differently, creating new models. And that's one of the payoffs and the rewards as well, of engaging in such a journey, is that it sculpts you, and it kind of helps, I think, helps us remember who we truly are. It's almost like we were born in this clean slate, and then for whatever reason, that early journey of childhood and puberty kind of like clouds us, and kind of like dumps all kinds of stuff that we eventually need to peel back to rediscover, who we truly are again. So it gives you that as a payoff. That's a great reward as well, because I think that is the ultimate freedom, is to be able to speak up your mind, have your beliefs, and just show up fully in all your glory, and attract all the weirdos like you that are magnetized.
We're all a special kind of weirdo, doing amazing things. And I'm gonna circle back to there was a quote. I had the privilege of hearing Jim Rohn speak, and just for the people who don't know who he was Tony Robbins' original mentor. He was around for a long, long time, and I got to see him before he passed. This was back in like 2003. And he kind of like shuffled out, and he's leaning on the lectern, and he said to all of us in the room, and this was like a personal development conference, and he was kind of the big name there. And I would go to all these things back then. I don't know if you went through that kind of conference stage, you're running around all these things, just so excited to hear this. This was all new information to me. I wasn't around people who said things like this, or had talked about positivity and like building wealth for yourself and just thinking differently. And he looked out in the audience and he said, all of you got this wrong. He said, you don't become a millionaire for the $1 million. He said, you become a millionaire for the person you become in the process. And I never forgot that. And that's what led me to really, learning how for so many women as well, this is a different process, and there's different rewards for reaching the $1 million+ mark. And so, Michelle, thank you for being such a great example of that, not for what you've done, but who you have become and who you are and continue to be for all of us in the trust. And, we just love having you with us. So thank you for all the wisdom you share.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. I'm excited anytime to talk about anything real estate, really.
We're going to have you back then. We're going to have you back for part 2. All right. Thanks for joining us on Reward, Michelle. I'll hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much, Allie.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Subscribe now to the Reward Podcast to be sure to not miss an episode. And don't forget to visit jointhetrust.org to learn more about our modern community for forward-thinking 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. You can learn more, apply to join us, or refer another woman you know who is over the $1 million mark and is ready for a different type of women's network. We have events coming up both live and online that are truly creating new possibilities for female leaders. That's jointhetrust.org. See you there.